Of course, fasting in Ramadan is an important and significant tradition for Muslims all over the world. And China's western region of Xinjiang is home to the Uyghur ethnic minority, most of whom are Muslim. The Chinese authorities there have now banned Muslim employees from fasting during Ramadan. The move comes amid a security crackdown in the region, which has been hit by a growing number of violent attacks. For more on this story, we can speak to Aleem Saitov of the World Uyghur Conference. Mr. Saitov, thanks very much for joining us. Why has China taken this move?
It's not surprising. Basically, the Chinese government is an undemocratic, authoritarian, and also an atheist state. It wants to secularize the Uyghur people and wants to essentially assimilate the Uyghur people into the Chinese secular culture. So that's why the Chinese government has banned fasting in the holy month of Ramadan, which is a duty of all Muslims, including the Uyghur people. So today, Uyghurs who work for Chinese government controlled, operated, or owned entities, whether they are schools, hospitals, or government, they simply cannot fast. If they fast, they will be fined, severely penalized, and in worst case scenario, they will be even arrested. And plus, Chinese government has just launched a one-year Strike Hard campaign specifically targeting Uyghur people's religious beliefs and practices. So the situation on the ground is very bad now in this holy month of Ramadan for the peaceful Uyghur people.
In the past, Mr. Saitov, it's been quite indirect, the pressure on the Uyghur community in terms of fasting. But this is quite drastic now, isn't it? It's very direct.
Yes, because the Chinese government sees the religious belief of the Uyghur people, Islam, as a threat to its continued hold on to the territory of East Turkestan, which is historically non-Chinese territory, just like Tibet. And China sees the Uyghur people's strong belief in religion is a big problem to keep the Uyghur people separate, unique identity, culture, and a language. That is a big obstacle in China's attempt to forcibly assimilate the Uyghur people. So from the Chinese government's mindset, it is when the Uyghur people lose their religion in Islam, and when they become secularized, and when they lose their language, their culture, and their religious traditions, then they will become like Chinese. Then there will no longer any problem in East Turkestan, just like in Tibet.
How are the Uyghur people reacting to this?
Uyghur people are pushed in a hard place and between a rock and a hard place. Because Uyghurs are Muslims, as Muslims, just like any people of faith, believe in any other religion, whether it's Christianity or Buddhism, it's your religious duty to follow your faith and practice it. And Ramadan is one of the most important pillars of Islam for Uyghurs to observe Ramadan and to pray and fast. But this atheistic and undemocratic government is forcing the Uyghur people to give up their faith, their belief in Islam, and as well as their practices. If they practice, they are punished. But at the same time, they want to be just a normal citizens, just mind their own business. But because of the Chinese policies, especially repressive policies, they can no longer be a normal Uyghur, normal Muslim in China. So the reaction is very bad, very tough, very hard. They want to pray, they want to fast, but they cannot. If they are found praying, the government will punish them and in many cases arrest them. And so they will be violating Chinese government's policies if they follow the pillars of Islam, which is their faith. So they are in between. So it is very, very difficult for Uyghur people, now especially because of the Strike Hard campaigns, to be a Uyghur and to be a Muslim in China.
What sort of punishments are we looking at?
First of all, if Uyghurs, especially those who work in government controlled, operated schools or hospitals, usually they are fined for one-time offenses. If they keep on fasting, then they will be suspended or fired from their jobs, their positions. No more any kind of salaries or retirement payment. And if the Uyghur continue to fast and even brush aside Chinese government policies and complain about Chinese government such repressive religious policies, the Uyghurs will be arrested. If the Uyghurs get somehow violent to some degree, then the Uyghurs can be arrested as a terrorist, separatist, or religious extremist.
What about
So,
sorry.
yes.
What about these night patrols?
Night patrols? Yes, since Chinese President Xi Jinping announced the one-year Strike Hard campaign last month, Chinese security forces are now initiating security sweeps and night patrols in predominantly Uyghur areas of East Turkestan, like in Kashgar, in Hotan, and other places. And Chinese armed soldiers, they patrol the Uyghur neighborhoods at night just to make sure that Uyghurs are not fasting. If they see any house has lights on, especially during the time to eat at night, then they will break into the house of the Uyghur people just to find them fasting. Then if the Uyghur family or the husbands in protection of their honor of their wives get violent, the Chinese soldiers are ordered to shoot and kill them just to label them as terrorists.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us, Mr. Saitov, Alim Saitov from the World Uyghur Conference there. And we have been in touch with the Chinese embassy here in London, but they haven't responded to our request for an interview on this story.